Hey there, this is Brennan with Gongs Unlimited, and I'm here today to talk about this harp bowl from Grotta Sonora. As you can see, it spins, it's cool, it's pretty, but when you get it, it's going to kind of sound like this, which doesn't sound good at all. And I'm here to show you how to tune this, and then how to play it once it is tuned. We have these tuning pegs here, and then the string goes across and is bored in to the actual bowl itself. And then there are these little two cut-offs of some steel dowel that are holding it in place, the string that is, on each side of the contact. And it's keeping it off of the bowl's surface so it's not vibrating against the bowl. Depending on how these strings are strung, they may fall out, they may buzz, or they may be perfect. Like this string right here is strung very low to the bass. And so there's a lot of tension on this, and it's not going to move. But say one like this up here, I'm able to just pull this out, and it falls out pretty easily. And if you do have one of these fall out, which is likely to happen over time from vibrations or just even bumping it maybe, you really have two options. The first option is to loosen this up even further, and then take your string and physically push it closer to the surface. And so that way, when you put this back in, you're going to have a lot of tension on it. But what I think is the easier way is, as long as you still have this in over here, if the string was high enough to let this little piece come out, then it's also high enough that it's not going to be running along the surface here. And so I would personally just tune it like it was never there to begin with. And I've done that with a few of these that have fallen out, and I've had pretty good results. There's nothing for it to buzz against, and like I said, as long as it's up here and it's strung high enough up here, you're never going to really have to worry, due to that tension of the string once it's tightened, of it riding down against the surface. But if you don't want to do that, the other way works. And either way, keep these little pieces somewhere that it's safe. Regarding the tuning itself, we tuned this by ear to match what they have in their storage facility at Grotta Sonora in Italy. And so we've kind of figured out afterwards, to the best of our knowledge, what the actual tuning is. It's separated into two separate scales when it is tuned. Obviously, it's not tuned right now, but we're going to tune it according to two separate scales that kind of complement one another, but have a different thing going on, so you get multiple sounds. And so starting with these 8 strings, we're going to do an A-sharp melodic minor scale. And on this side, we are going to do a standard D-sharp major scale. And they might seem like kind of obscure scales, but it's really a matter of this being a pretty weird instrument. And so you only have a certain amount of leeway as to where these strings can be tuned to have the right amount of tension, where you're not going to get a big wallop where it comes in and out of tune after you play it, but it's also not going to be so tight that you have the threat of the string itself snapping, A, but B, giving you more of a ping than a real resonant sound. And so starting with this side, we're going to start on the treble note and then work our way up to here. But before we do that, we want to give every string on here a little bit of tension, just to start kind of pre-gaming for when eventually we're going to be tuned up. And perhaps this is just a force of habit as a guitar player, but usually it's just a good idea to keep everything in the same amount of tension. So you do this one a little, you do this one a little, you do them all a little, instead of getting some completely tight and then some completely loose. And so now that we've got a little more tension on them, and it's a pretty close tension to what we're going to want in the end result, it's just not in tune. I mean, if that sounds good to you, cool, but it doesn't sound good to me. We're going to start here with the root note and here with the root note on each side. This one 2 octaves higher, and we're gonna have the root note in the middle. And so starting on the bass, we're gonna have A sharp, C sharp, which is the third, up an octave to A sharp, C, which is the second, C sharp, and an octave up again, the third, D sharp, this is the fourth, F, which is the fifth, and then end with 2 octaves from the original starting point in A sharp, the root note. I'm gonna start in the treble. You can start in the middle too, but since I know what note I'm starting with down here, it's just easier to start where it ends, if that makes sense, versus somewhere in the middle. But this is just an A sharp, and it's already kind of there. Our next note is gonna be an F. And that's an F4, I should say. Same with this. A sharp 4. F4. Now we're going to do a D sharp 4. C sharp 4. A C4, back to the octave, root note, A sharp, this time in the third octave. Then we're going to do a C sharp again, octave lower. And then we're going to end on the 8th string here with the bottom note, the root note, A sharp 2. Now, if you're new to tuning stringed instruments, you might expect it to be done, but as you're going to hear, it's not. Since we're bringing it up from an untuned state where there's not a lot of tension on the string, when you first tune it up, it's going to sit there for about 1 second, and then it's going to start to bend back toward its original position. All that means is you just go from the start, and you're probably going to have to tune this 2 or 3 times immediately, and then as you keep playing, you're going to want to check 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it may be, just that first day after you initially tuned it to make sure everything's staying in place. And then after that, down the line, just really once you hear something that sounds sour, then you're going to want to check that out. But other than this first hour or 2 after the tuning, everything should be happy. But for now, we're tuning. And that's about what we want it to sound like. So now that we have this side tuned, we're going to let that sit for a little bit, and we're going to tune this, the other side, to the D sharp major scale. Same thing, we're going to start down here, and we're going to use a different combination of notes on this side, not just a different combination of notes to the other side, but different notes, whether it be the second, third, the fourth, in the actual scale itself. And so down here, we're going to be starting, just like on the other side, with an A sharp, as opposed to a D sharp. Then we're going to go to a G. an F, a D sharp, which is a root note, a C, an A sharp, and this is an instance where as I'm tuning, this little guy fell out. And so this string seems to have plenty of space. It's also being held up over here. So I'm just going to tune this one without that. Happy as a clam. And then D sharp. And then an octave lower D sharp, your root note. Really your two root notes right next door to one another. Once again, this one's a little better, but it definitely still needs to be retuned. A sharp, G, F, C, A sharp, and our two D sharps. Let's revisit the other side. Add a tune. Once again, we're going to go back. This is totally normal for really any stringed instrument when you put fresh strings on, or when you tighten old strings even. It's very used to being in a state of low tension. And so you're kind of disturbing what it was up to previously, but it's okay, it'll get used to it. And now that seems to be happy. Once again, once you play it for a little while, if something sounds out of tune, check it, and maybe even check it after 5-10 minutes of sitting anyways, just to see. But for the meantime, and what's cool about this tuning is that even though this is our bass note on this side, and this is our bass note on this side, the A sharp and the D sharp are both included in either scale. And so if you want to go up 9 strings on this side, sounds good. Same thing on the other side. And the nice thing about this tuning is on one side it gives you the option for a minor scale, something that sounds distinct and distinctly different than the major scale over here. It sounds nice and happy, but if you play them together, they sort of equal out into something that sounds a little more chromatic, a little bit more atonal, where it's still pleasant and there's no sour notes in the combination. Once you let it sit a little, maybe tune it a little more, then this bowl is going to be ready to go for you. And you're going to be provided these wooden sticks, which are going to be your best friends when it comes to playing it. Other than these, your other best friends, but you already have those. You can ping it like this, just give it a little hit like this, not much pressure. You can strum it with your fingers. All together or separate. Once you got this tuned, you're ready to start playing and enjoying and spinning your harp bowl. Thanks for watching. See you next time.